last week during the share, Reverend Gail Muzio offered a quote that she heard from Deepak Chopra during an online summit that she and her husband John were watching called The Flow. And the quote that she read to us last week was, "If our spiritual and emotional intelligence does not keep up with technological intelligence, then we are doomed to extinction." Those are pretty powerful words, right? Extinction, like that's it, no more, right? From a New Thought perspective, it's like, well, life is eternal. Energy is forever moving and evolving and creating, and so there's no beginning, there's no end. However, the way that we experience ourselves as that energy, as that creativity, as love, as God, as whatever you want to call whatever that thing is, that's up to us. And so we are constantly, every single now moment, choosing, whether we're aware of it or not, how much of that allness, how much of that power, how much of that energy to experience and express as, right? And so what was alive for me this entire week was this quote just kept coming back at me again and again and again and again. And the thing that Reverend Gail said after she shared this quote was that these were very powerful words and the impetus for us to invite people to our community to grow in emotional and spiritual awareness. Well, that also is a very powerful statement, right? And I started wondering, why? Why is it important for us to invite people? Why is it important for us to connect with people and to even share what it is that we are so enthusiastic about, that we are so anchored in? Is it important at all? Well, I say yes. Yeah. And so if anyone who here read the newsletter that went out yesterday? A couple of people. So there were a few questions that I posed or that I posted in the newsletter. As I was opening up to what wanted to be shared and revealed today, those questions rearranged themselves and kind of reworded themselves, but the crux of them is still there. So instead of there being 3 questions, there are now 4 questions that I want to pose to everyone here, okay? And so the first one is, how do you embrace your own emotional and spiritual awareness? And I'm asking you as much as I'm asking myself, okay? And I'm not standing here pretending to have all of the answers, because I am a work in progress like every single individual here, right? I may have a bit more years of schooling in a certain area, but aside from that, we are all this incredible energy and creativity expressing from one now moment to the next. Sometimes we're aware of it, sometimes we're not, sometimes we are living life by design, a lot of times we're living by default, okay? So my question is, how do I embrace our own emotional and spiritual awareness? Well, one of the ways is by coming here, right? One of the ways is through practice, daily, ongoing practice. And that means you got to be committed to something. And even on those days when you don't feel like it, or you're tired, or you woke up late, or it's gloomy outside, or maybe you're traveling, or maybe you partied too much, I don't know. But you still need to embody the spirit, the love, the creativity that you are. And the best way to do that is through constant daily practice. Because practice, I'm not going to say makes perfect, but makes us better, makes us more efficient, makes us more effective, gives us the opportunity to recognize the allness that we are more easily because we practice it on a regular basis. So the second question is, because Reverend Gail was talking about inviting people into our community, what does community mean to you? Right? When we had our visionings last year, we had one on Sunday and we had one on Wednesday so that we could have the Celebrate and the Elevate crowd, different vibes, but similar reasons for coming here. Open up to the infinite possibilities of the quantum field and open up to what is it that this community wants to be? What is it that is happening? How is love, God, spirit, source, whatever you want to call it, how is it expressing in, through, and as us, right? And this is what came out of it. That our 4 main pillars of why we come together and what we champion are transformation, connection, knowing, and relatability. Those are the 4 main things that our community is anchored in. This isn't something I made up and said, this is what we're going to be doing, this is how we're going to be feeling. This came from the community. And then our 4 main values that came out were love, commitment, openness, and authenticity. And all of that is in service of our purpose at the center, which is embodiment. Okay? And like I said before, this is to feel. This is to know without a doubt, with 100% confidence and certainty that love is our true nature. And the more that we remind ourselves of that, the more that we practice that, the more that we feel that, the more we can show up as that without having to think about doing so, right? So when coming together in community, this is what we're doing. I looked up the word community, the etymology of it, and it comes from the Latin communitas, which means public spirit, which comes from the word communis, meaning common. Okay? And so I thought, well, the new thought perspective of this is we are coming together in oneness. We're coming together as one. We're coming together not just to celebrate the love that we truly are, but to be more of the love that we truly are, to amplify it, not just for ourselves, not just for each other, but for our world, right? This is the big why. We're not just here for ourselves. We are part of this global community of love expressing, right? Now, that goes through the why is it important to invite people to grow in emotional and spiritual awareness. And it can be something as simple as, well, the more we are aware of who and what we truly are, then the more we recognize our capacity for greatness, the more we recognize and acknowledge it in others, and as we up-level, then so does our world. But like the super, super simple thing is that as God, as love, as spirit, as source, as the quantum field of infinite potentiality, in order to experience itself, in order to fulfill itself, it needs to move and groove its way in through and as something, and that's us. So we come together in community so that spirit can fulfill itself more fully, so that it can experience itself more fully. And as we're doing that, we get to experience the love, the creativity, the genius, the awesomeness that we are at our core more and more and more and more. And because everything is energy, everything is vibration, it's all about frequency, the more we can vibrate at a higher frequency of love and knowing, compassion, peace, joy, all of those amazing high frequency things, the more we can only up-level the rest of the world. Instead of being dragged down by those who are lower frequency, we are the ones who get to help rise up and up-level those around us, right? And it can be automatic the more aware we are of who and what we are. So the next question, which came up today, was how do you support and steward our community? And so this speaks directly to connection, our pillar of connection. And the statement that goes with connection is, we nurture relationships and curate experiences to cultivate wholeness. Wholeness with a capital W. And that's just another way of saying aligned, in tune, anchored, knowing that no matter what is going on, no matter what it is that I'm experiencing, I am love, I am spirit, I am source, I am God, and as love, spirit, source, God, creativity, energy, whatever you want to call it, I am bigger and more powerful and more resilient and creative than anything I could ever think, believe, or feel, than anything I could ever experience. So the title of my talk today is The Power of Community Awakening. So we can have our own individual spiritual practices and we can do our own stuff, day to day. But until we come into community, until we come together, the power that we are, it's not being shared and experienced and amplified as much as it is in community. And so this is why we come together in community, because there will be some times where we are feeling so anchored, so aligned, so dialed in, but there will be other days where we're forgetting, or maybe we don't feel like it, or maybe like stuff is going on that is just reflecting back to us like, how could I possibly be bigger than any of this? And then we get to be reminded by people in our community, right? We get to be lifted up and held up and loved up until we can remember for ourselves and we can show up more as the love that we are. And even though there's this amazing quote by Ernest Holmes in The Science of Mind, one in consciousness with the infinite constitutes a complete majority. Isn't it better if we come together and all of those ones that are complete majorities come to make an even bigger majority? Right? Like, I get intellectually that in the quantum field, there is no time or space. I've read it enough times, I've recited it enough times, there is no time or space. So what I can know in my mind, I can know for someone else. They don't have to be in the same room for me to do the work that I do, to do affirmative prayer. But what I also know is what I feel. And whether this is part of my human seeming limitation or experience or whatever, when I meditate in a room with people, I feel more. When I am in a counseling session with someone in person, there's more of a connection there than there is if it's on the phone or via Zoom or remotely. And so it is so important for us to cultivate this incredible, amazing experience that we have when we come together in person, because we each have this incredible, amazing energetic field that extends out, from our minds, from our hearts. And as we come together, those fields can bump into each other and amplify each other, and then the love that we are can just go and be amplified that much more amazingly out into the world. So the power of community awakening is that the love we are at our core just gets to extend out and up-level everyone and everything in its warm embrace. Now, going to Emma Smiley, this is a bit more of the quote that we had in meditation. She writes, "What we accept in consciousness manifests. Consciousness is limitless. We have only one thing to do. We must expand our consciousness." And so this means that we really, really need to keep practicing, to keep remembering that we are so much more than this lifetime, than this skin and bones and everything that we are walking around in and we are experiencing spirit through and as. There is so much more to us. And the more that we focus on that, the more that we commit ourselves to working on that, to doing that spiritual work, then the easier it is for the tendency of our being to show up as the love we are, rather than to get stuck in the negative things that could happen in life. Because they will happen, for sure. But even when they're so-called negative, when we are showing up as love 95% of the time, even the seeming negative things can become opportunities and gifts and blessings and lessons, right? And the time it takes for us to go from to becomes shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter, because we remain anchored in the love that we are. So a fifth question came up for me as all of this was coming up this morning. And I'm asking it of myself, but I'm also asking it of you, because everybody in our community is a leader in your own right, okay? Just because I stand at the front of the room doesn't mean I'm the leader, okay? I may be the spiritual director, but all of us are leaders, okay? And so the question is, what kind of a leader do I want to be? What kind of a leader do I want to be in my life? What kind of a leader do I want to be in the relationships that I have? What kind of a leader do I want to be in my community? The kind of leader I want to be is I want to be the one who walks and talks this values compass that came out of our community, that embodies the love that I am, the energy, the creativity, as often as I possibly can, so that I can express more fully as that, so I can support others in doing the same, so I can really lean into my personal why, which is cultivating a global community founded in love. And it all has to do with awakening. Because even though we are that love, if we're not aware, if we're not awake to that incredible, amazing truth, then we're kind of walking around in a daze and in a haze wondering, why does life feel this way? Why am I missing out when all these other people are saying, whoa, life is so amazing, infinite possibilities, the quantum field, blah, 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 you know? So, in the end, if we don't take our spiritual work seriously, we will miss the infinite possibilities of being available to us. And I'm saying we will be doomed to suffer a limited, diminished experience of living. So I'm going to throw those 4 questions back at you just to open more of you up to the infinite possibilities of being. How do you embrace your own emotional and spiritual awareness? What does community mean to you? Why is it important to invite people to grow in emotional and spiritual awareness? And how do you support and steward your spiritual community? In the end, I don't have the answers. I'm inviting us all to open up to whatever it is that is possible, because every single now moment is a brand spanking new opportunity to not just remember who we are, not to awaken more to who and what we are, but to be the love we already are. Thank you, and so it is.